Welcome to JTech Studios. This is the presidential debate, Harris versus Trump. Let's go.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are
Can you
looking
put me
forward to a
on the
spirited
bottom
and
left,
thoughtful
please?
debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So
Hell
I
no, Craig.
was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
She was.
I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised.
All right. He gets the closing remarks. She gets the opening remarks. I think it's strategically better for Trump to have the closing remarks. You want to be like a button up in cells. You want to be the last thing that people see and hear. You know what I mean? No, he gets the closing. He gets complete closing remarks. I don't think she can rebuttal it. Or I don't think he would have. I don't know. I guess we will see. But as far as what she's saying right here, she cares about small businesses. That's crap. That's completely crap. You're about big government. The Republicans are about less government interference into people's everyday lives. We know you're not about small businesses. Small businesses are hurting. Take it from me, a small business owner. We are hurting. We are hurting because of your policies, you and Joe's policies. And frankly, those policies will continue to remain the same if you get elected in office.
My sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit.
Right now, bad.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result from tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world.
Go and throw us in the bottom
tariff
right
will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. we were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of.
I think they let 40,000 people, 40,000 Haitian immigrants, illegal immigrants, into Springfield, Ohio, which I heard had a population of roughly 60,000 people. Let me check that out. How many people live in what's the population of Springfield, Ohio? In 2020, the population was 58,662. They've got now 40,000 Haitian migrants that live there, and they're completely wreaking havoc on Springfield, Ohio.
Criminality, and we have to.
Driving into buildings, the crime, knocking over trash cans, flipping cars in the streets. I mean, I've heard all kinds of things, yelling at people in their lawn. Quite frankly, just scaring the hell out of people. When you have 40,000 people that migrate into a 60,000 person city, that's a drastic change. That's almost an entire city of people moving into the same population that's moving in. 40 to 60, that's not a big difference. Only split by 20,000 people.
To get them out, we have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century.
By your
Donald
beloved
Trump
Anthony
left
Fauci.
us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess.
Light
what we
effect
have done
4.
and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook.
Check your microphone in real quick, guys. We're using we tried to set up a live stream on this. We couldn't get the live stream going in time. We're new to all this, but we made an effort and attempt to. Check in your mic real quick, buddy.
Check.
You're in? You sound beautiful. Let's go.
A bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again.
Not true.
I believe very strongly that
Nobody
the
even knows
American
what that
people
is.
want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you.
I don't know what bounce back jobs are, right? So the pandemic comes, it hits, people lose their jobs, they get furloughed, whatever. Then the jobs open back up, and then
get the same job they had.
Yeah, they get the same job back, and then they want to count it as creating a new job. It's not the same. It's not the same. You did not create all those jobs. People just finally went back to work. The only reason they were furloughed or lost their job for so long and couldn't work is because you demanded that they not work. But in your red states, Texas, Florida, and other states, let me tell you, man, people continue to work, and they needed to because their families depended on them to survive.
Respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look...
I hate to keep stopping, but we have not heard a single policy out your mouth since you got the ticket. So what's your plan? I hope you plan to tell us what your plan is here tonight, because that's why we're at this debate. Everybody wants to know what you're going to do. We know what he's going to do. We know his track record. Everybody was better off. This past 4 years, under your reign and Biden's reign, nobody's better off. They're feeling the heat, man. Everybody's feeling it.
Over or under, man? You think the next 15 minutes she's going to crack or not?
No, I don't think she is. I think she's been preparing. She's been preparing for a long time with this. They said they had method actors in there, loyalists to her, dressed with an orange wig, with a box suit on, they said, just like looking like Donald Trump.
She had 40 days to prepare for that Dana Bash.
Yeah, well, that was complete crap, too. Her first and only interview with Dana Bash with CNN was a complete failure. We all know it.
They had 40 minutes of interview, and they cut it down to 16 minutes.
That's all she could do.
They had to cut the rest of it out.
It's all she could do.
Look
Let's
at his
go.
economic plan. It's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy.
Rich people create
and
jobs
the
that
best
employs
economists
people.
in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and
like
where we stand
3.5
on the
years
issues.
if
And
you
I'd invite
already,
you to
right?
know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. Just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences. Like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about
Tim
this,
Waltz is
with
being
COVID,
investigated
is he actually
because of his
thanked
billings in
President
China.
Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
Then why was it so wrong and you'd get canceled for even typing into YouTube or setting a video on YouTube or Twitter at the time for saying that COVID came from China? People got canceled for that. People got held for that. People lost jobs because of that. But now you admit it. Now you can admit it.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade last year. You said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women.
That's where I got to stop it. I was not going to chime in on the abortions. You know, I have no saying it because I'm a dude, but she just said the government should not dictate to the people what a woman does with her body. But if you leave it up to the government and you don't put it in the state's hands like Trump did, then what happens is you have the Democratic Party who takes office. They make it federally a law that abortions are good for all 50 states, doesn't matter. And if you leave it up to, and then the Republican takes office next term, let's say they say no abortions are good. So leaving it up to the government is not the smart policy to the federal government. By putting it in the state's hands, every state has the right to vote on it. And the will of the people is what will happen. And if the majority of the people in that particular state says that, you know, we want abortions and we want it up to, you know, this period of time, you know, you have up to this period of time to get the abortion done, then that's the will of the people. And if they say no abortions, that too is the will of the people. If you leave it up to the federal government where it was prior to it being passed back down to the states, then the issue is that when the Democrats take office, you'll have extreme abortions happening because of their policies, and then and then a Republican takes office, you'll have extreme abortions. You'll have the rights of the abortions being taken away completely because that's their policy. Why is it not better to leave it up to the state, to each state, to decide for themselves what they want to do? So if you live in Texas and Texas says no abortions, or abortions up to this period of time, X amount of weeks, and let's say it's past that time, you can't get an abortion in Texas anymore, but you can drive to New Mexico to get an abortion. To me, that sounds a lot fairer than every time a new party takes office, that party dictates to the entire country what should happen with abortions. Does that make sense? Republicans will take it off the table for 4 years. The Democrats will put it back on the table for 4 years, and it's going to continue to flip-flop around like that each time.
Well, the other thing she said is, Trump handpicked these. That was his job, was to pick the courts. That was his job, was to pick the Supreme Court justice.
Yeah,
if
that's his
Biden,
right.
If Biden and Kamala were in there, we'd have 3 other judges in there.
They picked a doozy recently, apparently.
I mean, they picked these people. That's the president's job.
Yeah, let's move on from the abortions.
Around
I don't want to get
our
stuck
country.
on it.
You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that.
Ain't nobody gonna
Her
let
husband
nobody
didn't want
bleed
that.
out. Come on.
A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced
Nobody
to carry a
wants
pregnancy
incest.
to term.
Come on.
They don't want that.
He already said
And I pledge
in
to
these
you,
situations,
when Congress passes a
he's all
bill
for it.
to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe
will not
that
happen.
certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to because, again, 2 things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to
They only did
the
that 'cause they
millions
wanted
and
the
millions
vote.
of people that had to pay off their
Clear
student loans.
student
They
loans.
didn't get it for
We
free.
want the vote.
But they were saying it's the same way
Let the
that
people
they
in the
talked about
country.
that,
We want
that
the
they talk
votes.
about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has
He
said
already
that
answered
you
it.
would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. in all fairness. J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond. But I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question. Would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and
that's
border security.
true.
We
they
know
cut
it's
him
an
right
issue
after
that's
that. They
important to
said, you know what,
Democrats,
let's
voters
exit
across
this.
the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer.
Does he talk about how the cannibals ate his uncle like Joe Biden did?
And what you will also notice is that
you never heard that? Joe Biden's uncle Boosie or whoever he was landed somewhere. Where was it? Anyways, the cannibals ate his uncle. Yeah, he's repeated that one over and over.
people start leaving his rallies early out of.
You had to bus them in. You thought he was busing people in, but we saw the buses of you busing people in. Not to mention, to get people to your rallies, you got to have Beyonce. You got to have a whole onslaught of people, performers, musicians, actors, just to get people there.
People cut out early. It took me 2 hours to get out of the damn parking lot.
And how long to get in?
It took me let's see, I left the house at 12.
And it was 20 minutes away.
20 minutes away.
And you left the house at what time?
6:30, 12.
12 o'clock, you left the house. You're 20 minutes away from where the rally was taking place. You did not get in till what time?
6:30.
6:30. So it took you, let's call the travel time and everything, it took you 6 hours to get in to the rally, being 20 minutes away.
There wasn't no way in hell I was leaving early. It's just
yeah. Ain't nobody leaving his rallies early. You're crazy as hell.
Exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first. And I pledge to you that I will.
He's talked nothing except about we the people and how he's going to help us, we the people. But we don't know what you stand for yet.
Will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill and
Respond
successfully
now.
so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And
Ding,
the people
ding.
that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there.
Ding, ding.
And then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that.
Ding,
People
ding.
don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as the rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio.
When he said that, did you see her face when she said that? She goes, like, damn, that's a good idea. Venezuela on steroids. You see her eyes, man? She went like, not too bad. Venezuela on steroids. I'm Kamala Harris. I'll take that.
Ohio.
That's
and
a win.
ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television.
Citizens
say my
are
dog
saying
was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people are
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
The city manager, of course he's going to say that, man. That's his job to say that. I'm doing a great job. I'm the city manager. But the people are going to the courthouses and petitioning their council members saying that the city of Springfield is in complete chaos. Who am I going to listen to? There was a black dude and a white woman I saw, and many other peoples. This isn't just one shade of color. This is people of all colors, shapes, and sizes. The citizens are saying it. Who are you going to believe out there? Who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe the citizens that belong to that community? Or are you going to believe the city manager trying to keep it under wraps? No, our city's fine. That's not happening. You know, we're good to go. I'm the city manager. Of course you're doing damage control. You're the freaking city manager, man. But the citizens are speaking out.
Who
Crazy.
Who's fact checking her goofy ass?
It'll all be fact checked as soon as it's over. People are standing by right now, fact checking her as we speak.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this.
Putin finds her laugh infectious. You bought Putin, Kamala. Did you buy him, or was he being facetious on you?
Election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who had formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain.
You took Dick Cheney. You're bragging about the Dick Cheney endorsement that you just recently got. Let me tell you, how many of you people out there just now remembered that Dick Cheney was even still alive? Didn't homeboy get like pepper sprayed in the face as well?
All I know is you better not go hunting with Dick Cheney. He may shoot you.
Did he do the pepper spraying?
No, he shot someone.
He's the one who pepper sprayed somebody in the face. He shot him with.
He's also the one who got us all in that Saddam Hussein. Dude, let's go get that oil.
That war, yeah. You're hooked in with the Bushes and the Cheneys. Come on, y'all hated them. Y'all talked shit, mad-ish about the Cheneys for. How long? 20 years now? 30 years now? Y'all, the whole Democratic Party, you couldn't stand the Cheneys. Now you're accepting his endorsement? You can have Cheney. Guess who we just got? We just got Elton John. What's up, son? We just got Elton John. You know who else we got? We got RFK. You know who else we got? We got Tulsi Gabbard. And plenty of other people are flocking this way, too. So you can take Dick and shove it. You can take Dick Cheney, and we'll take the ones I just mentioned, and I won't say the rest.
Including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney.
What are you fact checking? What is this for? Pet crisis in Ohio.
In Springfield, Ohio,
Citizen.
They had 20,000 Haitian migrants move in there to a population of 60,000. So besides the housing crisis, now these immigrants are eating people's pets. Yes, you heard that right. They are eating people's personal pets.
Eating people's pets.
Thanks for letting them in and cross the border illegally. I guess at one of the parks there, too, they've been going to the pond and killing ducks and geese and eating them. And a lady's cat was missing, and the neighbors had it hanging on the porch, skinned and cleaned and everything for them to eat, and they ate the cat. They've been walking by carrying Canadian geese. So, I mean, what? I'll never get it. I'll never get it. I have no words for this. But we know our liberal friends love pets, so maybe we need to share this with a lot of them so they can actually know who they're voting for, since the border czar is the one that let these people in. The current border czar, who's also
Kamala Harris, border czar. That border czar. So there you go. I believe a citizen over a city manager all day, every day, twice on a Sunday. Let's go.
And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump
and paid
term.
For by
and
y'all.
When we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they.
Incompetent people.
They have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far.
Almost spit out
in
my
fact,
drink.
I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down. All over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
What did y'all that
and
had
let's
the
be clear
election interference
where
shit?
each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for.
If there's a housing shortage, then why bring in 15 to 20 million more people? Are we short on houses out there? If we're short on houses, then we don't need 20 million more people in our country right now.
I tell you what, man, I worked in construction all my life, man. I never had a shortage of a buyer. I know that.
Well, you ain't going to have no shortage of a buyer anymore. You're having shortages of houses, apparently.
See, now we're going to have, if she gets in, now we're going to have to raise the prices of just to compensate all these people that are going to renege on their contract because it's going to get foreclosed on because she's going to give them $25,000 to go buy a house that they can't afford.
Well, if you're a legal immigrant in Cali, apparently you're getting $150,000.
Oh, there you go.
$25,000 everywhere else. Cali, you getting $150,000. Go to California. If you're illegal, if you're here illegally, go to California. They're giving you $150,000. Maybe you get the 25 on top. iPhones, $13,000, and food stamps. This, that, and
the other.
Of course,
you got about a $800,000 house that you're buying. So,
man, who wants to? Where's this $150,000 going to come from? We got to get moving.
Address what we must do to support our small businesses. Address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent.
Preach it.
And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal.
Preach it.
And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A
Amen.
response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy. It was a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my
flip-flop. Flip-flop, flip-flop, hypocrisy. Flip-flop, 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 hypocrisy. Yeah.
values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest.
We would not have to rely on foreign oil if you did not shut down our drilling in the United States and cut our and kill our pipelines.
It's amazing for the last 3 years how much it's cost me to fill up my damn gas tank. Now all of a sudden, 2 months before the election, my gas price is cut down by about $10.
Damn, Craig.
Increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President
What
Trump,
have you
well,
done
First of all, I
the
wasn't
last
given
3
$400 million.
What
I
are you
wish I
even
was.
talking
My father
about?
was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up. Very wrongly,
Don't shake your
very
head. No,
horribly.
hell yeah, you
And
were.
everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out.
Yeah.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down many.
Excuse me. I'm talking. Excuse me. I'm talking now. Mike Pence. Excuse me. I'm talking now. Excuse me.
She actually
Get her.
She actually said that in a rally of hers.
Can we rewind that? Rewind it.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail.
He's got a clip. Let's
we
watch
need to do
it.
about demilitarizing our schools.
Flip it over.
And taking police officers out of schools. We need to deal with the reality and speak the truth about the inequities around school discipline. We're in particular.
Okay.
I think it's like kind of odd that like
Being incarcerated for a
Go
couple
that
of
other
days
clip
is
right
traumatic.
after it, real quick. Damn. Hit back on it real quick. Just real quick. Oh, it's gone now. All right, go back. Put us on the screen, buddy.
She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. if she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment,
to.
as she understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office.
Why are we still talking about this?
You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace.
I like how the media always cuts out the parts that makes Trump seem sane, like peacefully and patriotically, you know, make your voices be heard. And then all that's like left in it at the end when the mainstream media, you know, broadcasts what he said is, you know, go protest on the Capitol. It's like, no, he said peacefully, patriotically. That's how we do it in this country, guys. We can peacefully and patriotically encourage people to go and protest. That's fine. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. He did not advocate for people to storm a building or to do anything of that sort. Plus, nobody was killed except Ashley Babbitt, who was one of the protesters, who was shot by a cop. And in my opinion, in a lot of people's opinion, it was an unlawful shot.
But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just ask you,
David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible.
Did say on video,
the
I'm
question was about you as
responsible.
president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember.
Yeah, because you cut it again. Your mainstream bought and paid for media cut it and said, cut the clip. He said, I completely condemn the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists. And he said also there were fine people on both sides, meaning there are fine people protesting on both sides, but I completely condemn the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists. Why are you even bringing this up? You can go and check countless videos of him saying this. Now, if you take the full clip and you chop it right here, sure, all you're going to get is there are fine people on both sides. Then you can interject and say, see, he's a Nazi and he supports them.
We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
She takes responsibility. She just said it. They don't know. Trump made the proper calls to the proper people. You are in charge, Nancy Pelosi, of securing that particular protest and making sure that there were sufficient people there to protect and to restrain in the event that a riot did break out. And you failed. You dropped the ball. And on that video, you admit that you take complete responsibility. You admit. Now, back to this, the Charlottesville thing, I'm sick of. All of us, we all don't like neo-Nazis. We all don't like white supremacists. We all cannot stand racism. Okay? But for you to throw this back again, this tired old damn thing back again at him, when he's completely condemned it time and time again. David Duke, the Grand Wizard of the KKK, what? Good chummy buddies with your president, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden. I'm pretty sure Joe Biden was at his funeral. Is that true? Okay, the Grand Wizard, the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, your president, your commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, was at his funeral. Okay? Now, did he maybe sneak into Mar-a-Lago once or something, or was shown on a picture with Trump? You know how many pictures y'all as politicians take? You know better than anybody. You're going to take a picture eventually someday with somebody who's up to no good, and you might not know it, you know? You might not know it.
You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. You had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly.
Thank you. Let's get back to the video.
You're changing history.
That when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia
Your tired old ass
The
quote.
the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back.
There's a lot
Let's
more
not
peaceful
go back. We're not
protests
going
than some
back.
of the
It's time to
BLM
turn the
protests.
page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath. If this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking,
auto industry.
let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a
starting to
course
upset me.
for the future and not go
Bloodbath
backwards to
on
the
the
past.
auto
Let me
industry.
just follow
Fact
up here.
check.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will say it was
over
perfect.
a period of 30
it was
years.
debunked in almost every news.
34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country, think of it, went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories.
They're talking about the auto industry. He is not talking about a bloodbath, about killing. Now, I want you to look up, and we'll continue the debate, but look up how many times the Democrats use the word bloodbath and see if you can just find a quick collage of bloodbath, 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 but they've used it a lot.
Paper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed. Those people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I said that sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders,
and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread
standing.
fraud.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker, so he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace.
I heard the opposite.
And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate,
like I heard like Putin, and he's talked to Kim Jong-un. Those guys are like, you know, don't even want to do nothing with us ever since Trump left office. And now that he's not in office, now they're laughing at not Trump, at Biden, at Harris, at Pelosi. It's just ridiculous.
You think our adversaries, our enemies, or our allies are laughing at Trump, a strong leader that holds people to their convictions, or that potentially scares the daylights out of our enemies? No, they're laughing at you. They're laughing at Biden. They're laughing at Biden eating ice cream cones on a daily basis, sitting on the beach, doing nothing, not running a government. Or you, Kamala Harris, who is incapable of running a government, incapable of setting policies, incapable of strength, incapable of putting our adversaries in their place. They know if you get in office, then the world is theirs. But if Trump gets in the office, then they have no option other than to back down from these wars and to, you know, our allies to pay their fair share into NATO and other things. So I think it's opposite. I think they're laughing at you. I don't see any other world leader laughing at Trump. I think they're laughing at you guys.
And deny
y'all bunch of clowns.
And over again, our court cases you have lost
Comical
because
clown.
you did in fact lose that election. It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament
These are the biggest
or the
odds right
ability
now.
to not be confused
They got Trump up
about
57.9%.
That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve
To you.
better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary.
They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him.
And they
I
respected
ended the
him.
Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it
Not
back
y'all,
on
though.
day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza.
Who's the we? This is Israel and the Palestinians and Hamas, the three people involved here. Now we have hostages that were taken, American hostages that were taken. Who's the we, Kamala? Let Israel, the Palestinians, Hamas, and Iran, let them settle it. You know, I mean, we'll support Israel. We'll give them the weapons, the missiles they need for their Iron Dome to blow the missiles that are being shot from Gaza over into Israel. They'll blow them out of the sky. That way their people don't get bombarded by hundreds of missiles a day. But why are we dictating to all these other countries how they need to run their country, how they need to retaliate for the slaughter that was comparable, if not worse, to our 9/11? Why are we in their business? Why don't we? If we can't even run our own household right now, for the past 3.5 years, our house has been in disarray. Our country's been in disarray. Why do we have to step in to all their business? You know, why do we have to dictate to Israel and the Israelis what they need to do to secure their borders when we can't secure our border, or what they need to do to get the hostages out. I mean, same thing with Russia and Ukraine. I mean, why do we got to be up in everybody's business? I think
this is the reason everybody hates us, is we got to have our nose in all their damn business
all the time. I mean, she's making
we
me
can't
hungry.
we can't even control our own freaking border. Why are we trying to control someone else's?
Precisely.
Where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population, because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself.
This is police at the DNC. They had 3 fences up to keep out protesters. When the president of Israel came, they let all these people up on our Capitol, right outside the doors where this man is in there talking to our Congress. And I can bring up that footage too. They're just out there in total turmoil.
Let me ask you.
But when she's at the DNC, they had that thing locked down.
So fences work? Border fences work? I mean, if you own a home, don't you feel a lot safer with a fence around your house? If you're at home, don't you feel a lot safer locking every door and every window? Is there a reason that people put up gates and fences? Is there a reason people lock the doors and the windows to their house, the car? Is it possibly because we don't trust all the people out there from breaking into our home? And that's the people that live here, much less the people that don't know our culture coming in by the millions over the border. Man, put up a border wall, secure our border, the home to our country, as we secure the homes to our houses as well.
It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine.
These are all at the Capitol.
Scroll up. Yeah. It was a dog saying Haitians ate my mom. All right, go back to the video. We got to get through this. Come on, guys. Man, I don't know if y'all saw it real quick. You can rewind and pause on the video. But it was a dog holding up a sign saying Haitians ate my mom. And funny.
Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential
Quit
debate.
cutting the man off.
Right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Dang. He loves kitties and ducks. That man will go into the water
ABC News presidential debate
for kitties and ducks.
You probably fast forward through the commercial.
Oh, you're right. We're going to get there, people. We're going to get there.
Key moments are
into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration.
Let's go.
Must defend you.
Round 2, presidential debate. Harris versus Donald J. Trump. Fight!
Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for $250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different
Sleepy
from
Joe?
what we're seeing from President Biden?
Who is that?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Somebody check
At this
please.
point,
I believe the reason that Donald
Bernie's.
Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania.
She shared with him American intelligence? Isn't that what Hillary Clinton did with all her 19 million servers and shit she had? And all them emails?
Not 100% sure, but it was definitely something crooked. Probably something like that, but I'm not 100% sure. Who knows what kind of intelligence she shared, but let's see what else she's got to say, and we'll come back. We'll circle back Jen Psaki this thing.
And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
It would never have happened.
Understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did.
and the war started 3 days later.
Vice
And
President?
that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in.
Is this a real picture?
That is a real picture.
This is a real picture of Kamala Harris. Is that Kamala Harris?
That is Kamala Harris.
This is 100% real, you think?
Yes.
This is Kamala Harris and the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, right here. Now, the moderator said Kamala, he was trying to give her credit because I don't even think he knew, said, have you ever met with Putin? Have you ever met with Putin? And
she sidestepped the question.
She sidestepped it. She didn't say yes and she didn't say no. She instead said, I've met with Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, 5 different times, I believe is what she said. So there's your answer right there. Kamala Harris, fact-checked. It's been fact-checked. Most certainly did meet with Putin because she is side by side with his arm around her is what it looked like, I believe. And that is 100% a meet with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. Let's go.
In any war zone.
You liars. You lie. You call Trump a liar. He likes to embellish. He likes to tell stories and stuff like that. Cool. I like listening to it.
Now, whether or not she made any kind of deal, I have not confirmed, but she has met with.
You don't think Trump is in the know? Trump knows. He says that they sent her days before the war broke out to try to usher in peace, to try to prevent the war from happening. He met with her, realized that she is nothing but she is nothing but butter. He can slice through her like it's nothing. That she's weak, She's incompetent, and he had no qualms about going to war with Ukraine after meeting with Kamala Harris.
Around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite
Bill
and
Clinton used to have him over for barbecues all the
respected
time.
world leaders.
What's talking about? He met with the Taliban at the Capitol. Osama bin Laden was at the Capitol many, many, many times with Bill Clinton.
Is that real?
Yes.
The actual Osama bin Laden?
Who you think trained him?
Damn.
And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that
that's
because
not a hard
they deal with the wrong people.
Put it back up.
But I got involved.
While he talks.
And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban.
Osama bin Laden with Hillary Clinton.
Don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I
said, his and her disgusting face down.
And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish.
I'm sorry. I gotta ask, why is Osama bin Laden posing in pictures with the Clintons? Why? I want to know. Somebody leave it in the comments below. Somebody who is in the know, please leave it in the comments below. Why Osama bin Laden is posing with pictures of the Clintons, with the Clintons. I want to know.
They blew it. The agreement said you have to do this.
Who's the other dude? Photoshop fake as real? Was it 2007 Photoshop fake as real? What does that mean? Russian spokesperson, TV comment.
They're asking which one's fake and which one's real.
Which one's fake and which one's real? Don't know. Somebody knows. Please let us know.
And they didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care.
Because y'all have made the whole world about race. When it's very hard to find somebody who's racist in today's age, truly racist, y'all have made the last 3.5 years about race baiting, race. So he says something.
Joe Biden's one that brought it all up in the first place was he had to find a woman of color to be his VP.
A woman of color to be his VP. That was the only credentials. Didn't matter if it was a intelligent woman of color. Didn't matter. All that mattered is he just needed a female of color.
When she
crazy,
ran,
man.
When she ran,
not how we pick our politicians.
When she ran for Congress, her speech was she was the first Indian elected into Congress. The first Indian elected into Congress.
And that's what she ran on. Yeah.
Now,
as VP,
she is running. She wants to be the first black woman in presidency.
I mean, I don't even know why it should matter. Just, be the qualified person to be the vice president of the free world.
I want.
Okay,
Yes, I want the most qualified person for
Absolutely.
any job. I don't care. I don't care if it's black, white, Mexican, Chinese. If I'm having open heart surgery, I want the best.
Give me the best.
Not the DEI hire.
Exactly. Give me the best qualified for that position. Nothing else matters.
To weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent.
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's
whatever
up to her.
She wants to
That's
identify as.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Bullshit. You're a tragedy.
I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember,
you've been dividing this entire country by race for 3.5 years now in an effort to put us, the American population, against each other, because by doing that, we're much easier to control and manipulate. Your whole gimmick, your whole shtick is to claim race. Racist. That's racist. Everything's racist. Math is racist. Everything's racist. That's what y'all ran on. That's been your policy. That's been your thing. You try to divide us. We've got news for you, man. Black and white people get along a lot better than what you think, okay? I don't know why the government continues to throw this shit at us to divide the American population, to pit us against each other. I know why they do it. They do it because they want to control us, and we're much easier to control if that's the case. But, I'm so sick of hearing this race stuff, man. I'm about done with it. Kamala, you are the one. That's your everyday lingo. That ain't Trump's everyday lingo. That's you.
how Donald Trump started. He was land. He owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
Sorry, I'll fact check myself. She
And
was
I
the
think
first
the American
Indian woman elected in the Senate. Yes.
People want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor.
Certainly, you could become the first Indian senator in U.S. history, which would be quite an accomplishment.
Knock wood.
I know a lot of people. Some of
First Indian woman elected in senator.
Why'd she say not good?
She said if all's good. She was running for senator at the time.
Neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans.
What's your
Where's
plan?
the plan at, lady?
To give startup
Same time,
businesses
Gene.
$50,000 tax deduction. To pursue
You have been here almost 4 years.
Her only plan is to print more money and just to throw it at people. That's your plan. That's the only thing we've heard. You keep talking about how you love everybody. You want to bring people together. Joy, 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 joy. Let's talk about the plan. Why we got to do this? Let's talk about the plan. You've had a long time to talk about the plan. You did one interview. You did not talk about the plan. That's when you were supposed to talk about the plan. Now you're doing only one debate on your terms, not on Donald Trump's terms. He had to debate Biden on Biden's terms. He had to debate you on your terms. You didn't concede to us one thing that he wanted to do. Biden didn't concede to one thing that he wanted to do during that debate either. And it's always on your terms. But where's your plans? Talk about it. If you want to talk about your plans, talk about your plans. Do it right now. Don't just fluff us with, I want to bring people together. I want to do this. I want a happy life and everybody have joy and bliss. Blah, blah, fucking blah. Talk about your damn plans if you're going to talk about your plans. If not, get the hell out the way. Let the man take office so that we can have a better life.
Their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for
More
young
money,
families
make inflation
for the
go
first year
up
of your
more.
child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I
It's not
have
going to
a
help
plan
anyone.
that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for
You give everybody $25,000 to buy their first time home, then all the prices of the homes are going to go up $25,000. That's what everybody's saying. Give people $25,000 for their first home. All the house prices are going to go up $25,000, even if it's not on a first time home buyer. If they decide to purchase another house, sell their house, buy a house, they're going to go, their price has gone up $25,000 too now. Your countless giving of money, you're so generous. You are so generous, Miss Money Grows on Trees. Tell us, show us this money tree you got.
There is a reason why everybody don't have a way of getting a house of their own. Because a lot of people are not responsible enough to be able to make the house payment. Then all these $25,000 loans that she's giving out, there's going to be about 50% of those are going to get foreclosed on.
I don't even know, are those loans or is that just straight money to the house?
That's just straight money for a down payment on a house. You run a business, you see people every day. How many people come in here that don't know how to manage their money?
A lot. It
Do
happens.
you really think these people are going to be able to make their payments on their house?
No.
All these people she's fixing to give money to, 50% or more are going to have their homes foreclosed on.
Yes, the banks will end up owning it.
Not to mention the interest rates are going to go through the roof because she's giving away all these damn monies.
Wasn't this the plan, though? Isn't all the corporations buying up all the houses right now? So you give the people this money, and they end up not being able to manage the money and pay for the house properly, and they get foreclosed on, and then it goes to the banks, which is just another big business in itself. So,
well, you remember back in like the 90s and early 2000s. It probably even goes back even further than that. You remember the balloon notes?
Yes.
How many people lost their homes because they got this balloon note because they got into this home and they got all this money and then they couldn't pay for the house and then the house got foreclosed on.
Yes.
The house would never be paid for.
Never, dude. Never.
And you don't understand the economy. You shouldn't be running the economy.
I agree with that 100%. Let's see where we're at, guys. Let's see where we're at, man. We're almost there. Everybody hang on. It's going to get interesting at the end. You always know it does.
For first-time home buyers.
Punches are going to get thrown.
That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
She has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she has
we do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay,
that's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need
Those
to
are her
respond.
policies.
No, the
President
former
Trump,
president has said something twice that I need to respond to.
I'm sorry. We're going to move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today.
Still is.
And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that, and you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run health care system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours.
We did hit record,
when
right?
It was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate
I'll
drug
give them 100 days. I'm prepared to take executive action and put in place a ban on the importation of assault weapons into our country. But we still have to deal with the over 2 million assault weapons that are currently in the streets of America. And so a buyback program is a good idea. If Congress fails to act, I'll give them 100 days to put a bill on my desk for 6. I'm prepared to take executive action. I'm prepared.
Do you know how to hit pause?
A little bitty button, man. It's a little bitty button.
Now, she did even more recently say that she will do a mandatory buyback program on AR-style weapons, rifles. Meaning, if it's a mandatory buyback, that is much different than offering a buyback to people who want to just turn their weapons in on their own accord. A mandatory buyback means executive order, placed by an executive order. But a mandatory buyback means you have to. They've got you in the record system. They know you got one. They're going to come knocking. They will search your house. They will take your gun, and they'll give you a fraction of what you paid for it. You will never get your gun back, and you will never be able to buy another one again.
On behalf of you, the American
Fact.
people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding
I would
that
like
the
to
value.
give a big shout out to Elon Musk for making things so easy on X.
Love you, Musk. Elon, you the man. Hey, can you let us, can you follow us?
Follow us, Elon.
Elon, man, please.
We need your help.
We need your help, bro.
Please adopt me.
Kamala's making it hard for us. She's making it so difficult.
I want to go Mars.
We started YouTubing, we started podcasting and Xing, and she's made it extremely difficult. I said, wow, Kamala, you made it very hard for us to be successful, not just with the podcast, but with my business too. She won't place sanctions on other countries, but she'll place sanctions on small businesses. She says she wants to help small businesses, but she doesn't. It's nothing but lies. Kamala, you're going to say one thing today, and when you get in office, if you get in office, you will do a complete other thing. We all know it. We're not stupid. The American population is not stupid. You are. We're not. You flip-flopping hypocrite. Let's go.
I bring to this
I thought you were fixing to say something else.
Access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice President
prologue
Harris,
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of...
She made a mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Climate change is a farce.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who...
I mean, climate change is real in the essence that our climate does go through different cycles and does change, but extreme climate change, the global warming, the ice caps are going to melt. It's going to rise our oceans above the highest mountains. Why are all the celebrities and all the politicians buying all these multi-million-dollar properties right on the water? If you're so scared that in the next 5 to 10 years that your land that you just built multi-million-dollar home on is going to be underwater, why would you buy it underwater? You'd be buying all the mountaintop properties, not the beachfronts.
The water level at Plymouth Rock is the same as it was in 1776.
I did see that. You did show me the rock. Yeah, dude. Let's go. Spit it out. Spit it out. Come on, Kamala.
Who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go.
Speaking of insurance being jacked up, a guy in Springfield, Ohio, he said he did a TikTok. Go find it, and it's got his new bill, or got a bill from his car insurance company with a extremely jacked up new rate that he has to pay, because it said the cost of doing business in your area is now costing us more money because of all the illegal immigrants that they've recently dumped into that area. And I'm sure cars are getting broken into, stolen, this, that, and the other. So now he has to pay a lot higher price on his car insurance today than he did yesterday because of your immigration.
Non-insured drivers.
Yep. Let's go.
We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as Vice President over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas
Another $1 trillion
production to
down the
historic
tube.
levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain,
It's amazing
who also
how
know that part of
something she
building a
said was
clean
good. She was a part of the administration, but all the other crap that, like the inflation part of it, is like, oh, I wasn't there. I had nothing to do with that.
Touche, sir. Good point.
energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under
I think
Donald
auto
Trump. Let me
plants
just
were
tell you, they
opened
lost
up with
10,000
Donald Trump.
manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back
Getting close.
Getting there. Play that J-Tech little intro, whatever you came up with real quick.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue
the intro
after
thing
this.
you did. While I get us to the next thing. Trump pushes baseless claims about immigrants eating the pets. They're going to be just talking crap. Dogs and other pets.
It's a commercial break.
Hit it. I just want to see it. He did it today. I'm getting us back to the thing. Zzz. Got a little dog you can put up again. A little doggy. You know, little dog. Little kitty cat. Little cat. Here we go. Going back into the debate. You ready? All right, guys. Part 3 of the debate. The closing arguments. The presidential debate. Trump versus Harris. Let's get it on.
Closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military, and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people.
Misdemeanor crimes.
And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
You
The only
also
thing I
let
ever
one of
asked
Willie
them,
Brown's
are you okay?
people out of jail.
And that's the kind of
He never
president
even
we
got
need right now.
prosecuted.
Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
You're going to build back the country by investing in us. I'm not even quite sure how to take that, really. Or what that even means. But we still, as of yet, and I don't think she's going to speak again during this debate, heard anything substantial from her, which is up to par with her standards.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they laugh. I know the leaders very well. They come to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
What did y'all think? Devin, what did you think first?
Well, like Trump said, and John's been saying all night, is that, she's had 3 years and nothing's been done. She could have done it almost 4 years. And what's worse about it, Biden's had plenty of time, even before his presidency.
60 years.
60 years of trying to do things right by the American people, and they can't even do it in 1 year. I'm not going to give them another 4 just to prove their point.
John, how do you feel?
I feel like we're in trouble. So much trouble if these Vegas odds don't hold up.
Well, they say that the Vegas odds has pretty much always held up against the presidency. So I think those odds are pretty strong and probably the will of the people. What did you think about Kamala Harris? How did you feel that Kamala Harris did in this debate? Just be honest. And then the same question to you too, Devin.
To be honest with you, I think she told a lot of bullshit. I don't believe a word she says, but I mean, she didn't look like a drunk, babbling idiot like I usually see her. I mean, she had a better delivery today, but of course, I mean, she's been there for the last, 10 days to prepare for this debate, and all the questions were handpicked for her, and, whatever.
They say that she's also was slipped the questions and stuff, so she had ample time to come up with the correct responses for them.
Exactly.
How do you feel, Devin, about Kamala and how she did in the debate? Not just on what she said, but also how she held herself. Did she look presidential to you?
I mean, like, she wasn't that bad in my opinion, but like, she should have done more research. Like, Trump was even fact checking her. He couldn't get most of his points across. He kept fact checking her. And the one thing I did think was Trump was wrong on one thing, is we're not going to go straight into another world war. We're going to go into a civil war at this point, to be honest with you.
It'd be a world war and a civil war.
I mean, yeah, it could very well be both. Yeah, it could be both. I was trying to think in the point of the speech or the debate where he said that. I mean, yeah, it could be both. I think she did not look bad. I thought she was going to do far worse than what she did, in the sense of how she presented herself, how she held up and stood against Trump. I don't feel like she looked presidential in the slightest, but I do feel like she did a decent job with the debate. I didn't think she could debate or get through a debate, at least with Trump, and she did. So that's just for starters. Now, again, I don't feel she looked presidential. I think there's so many holes in what she's saying. I think
she wasn't presidential at all.
No, she's completely lying to us. And when she gets in office, she will do the complete opposite. Why? Why is she lying to us? Because she's going to tell us whatever we want to hear so she can get elected. But once she gets in office, she will completely flop on those policies or whatever she's telling us today. Now, Trump, for a fact, him through and through. He's been president before. What you hear him say is not a lie. When he says something, you better believe that you can believe it. This is why people don't like him, because he tells the truth. And then all the eggshell people cry and whine and bitch and moan and complain. And it's because what he's saying is the truth. So when we hear him speak, we know we can believe what he says, and what he says he's going to do, we know that he's going to do it. And I do think he looked presidential, and I commend him for not once but twice shushing her as she shushed Pence during their VP debate, last term. And she did it several times. I'm talking. Well, you know what? Sometimes in debates, it don't matter. Hang on. It don't matter if you're a girl or a guy debating a girl, or two girls going after, or two dudes, or whatever. People are going to come in and try to, talk over you. It's a debate, and they can get heated sometimes. That's fine. Whatever. But, you don't have to make it seem like you're a female and he's like mansplaining or whatever you would want to call it. Like, I'm talking now. I'm talking. That shit's annoying. But Trump, I'm glad that you gave her a taste of her medicine, not once but twice. Go ahead, John.
And she recently did that to the audience at one of her rallies.
Oh, I'm talking now. No,
yeah, she did that.
Excuse me. Excuse me now. I'm talking. Yeah. And then cackle.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Actually, she got
two coconuts fell from the coconut tree. Did she?
Yeah, she got really pissed.
I think those coconuts that fell from that coconut tree hit her on the head as a child. I think that's what's up with that. So anyways, guys, y'all have anything else y'all want to add to this?
Get out and vote.
Get out and vote. Get out and vote. And make sure you make the right move for you, for your family and for your future. This is J-Tech Studios. Please hit the like, the subscribe button, ring the bell, and leave us a comment below. And remember, America, get out and vote, and we love you. And we're out. Peace.
Peace.